Hey, top of the Monday morning, everybody. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. Alongside Jesse Cofield, I am Emerson Lazia. Let's go.
A lot to get to today on this Monday morning to kick off our week. We have our fake Hall of Fame committee continuing their voting process.
They're real people, but it's a fake Hall of Fame.
Correct. It's a fake Hall of Fame, real people. We're going to hit on best bets around the NHL, PGA, NBA, but it is hangover time, and I am not just talking about Emerson's condition following his trip to Kansas City.
Yeah, let's go ahead and overreact to what went down around the Divisional Round of the NFL playoffs. Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich, show your handsome faces, please. Thank you. Yes, let's start there in KC, where the Jags blew a huge opportunity by failing to take advantage of a broken Mahomes and not showing the same aggressiveness here that allowed them to rack up multiple upsets this season. That was heartbreaking to witness in person. But Trevor Lawrence said after the game, this is more of the beginning than the end. We will be back. Jeff, that's not an overreaction to say that, right? The Jags will be back in the playoffs again next season?
No, it's not an overreaction, man. I mean, we've got a quarterback, obviously a first-round draft pick, first overall draft pick. It's his second year in the league, and he's making strides, going from basically being on the worst team to a team that, made the playoffs. And I mean, look at that game against the Chiefs. The final score may have said 7 points, but I mean, there was every opportunity this game was going to come down to the absolute final drive, the final play of the game. I mean, what was the difference here? The difference wasn't even really Trevor Lawrence or the offense. The offense for the Jaguars was fine. The offense was moving the ball with the same kind of efficiency as the Chiefs. What the difference was is that the Chiefs had some cornerbacks and some rookie defensive players that made some plays. Jalen Warren late in the game making an absolutely terrific interception on really what wasn't that bad a ball by Trevor Lawrence. And then, the Jamal Agnew fumble being caused in the middle by the Chiefs defenders as well. Like, that was the difference. And maybe if you're a Jags fan, you just look at, maybe we just need to add some guys like that in the draft and we'll get there. It certainly feels like that for the Jaguars. And look, I mean, I haven't even talked about Calvin Ridley joining this team next year. Who knows what he's going to bring? There's a lot of positives for the Jags. It's not an overreaction to say that at all. They're also in a division that's just extremely weak. So, yeah, the Jaguars are going to be back. Absolutely. They've got everything going for them right now. All
right, Pierce, how soon until the window for true, consistent contention opens for the Jags? Jeff brought up a good point. Calvin Ridley added this offense. They get that 1A receiver. We've seen what adding a 1A receiver does to many quarterbacks around the league. Guys like Jalen Hurts, and we also saw Josh Allen when they added Diggs to the picture.
This might not be the beginning or the beginning of the end, but it is the end of the beginning. And the next step is coming for Trevor Lawrence. Okay. Yeah, it would be nice to see them add another superstar talent. And if that gets them over the hump, then so be it. It's going to be hard to attract or even to afford. I think they have a little bit of salary. Last year, they had to overpay to get Christian Kirk in. A lot of people second-guessed that decision. It seemed to have paid off. Now they got to pay even more. But I think just like Joe Burrow, teams and players wanted to play for the Bengals when Joe Burrow proved himself. I think Trevor Lawrence has proved himself. Coaching staff has proven itself. The scheme was there. They've been good. They've got a lot of fight. But as Jeff mentioned, they just lacked a little bit of execution. You just cannot make mistakes on the road. And they didn't make a lot of egregious errors, but you have to be close to perfect to be a really good team in the playoffs. They didn't quite get there, but they're going to be fine moving forward. The bigger question is Kansas City. I think I have some serious concerns about Kansas City moving forward. It's the same concerns that we've had all year. This is a West Coast offense that's very reminiscent of those 2000s era Philadelphia Eagles West Coast offenses with Donovan McNabb, and they would just roll through the regular season. They get to the playoffs, and their inability to stretch the field and make big plays would just cost them games. And we saw that against the Jags. They really couldn't put away the Jags. I know that Mahomes is banged up, but Mahomes is still going to be banged up. And that their biggest problem all year is they've got Kelsey to hit some big plays, but they're not moving the ball downfield. Facing a Bengals team that's had a very solid defense, I just don't think they're going to be able to dink and dunk their way into the Super Bowl.
All right, Philly rolling over the Giants on their way to the NFC title game. Did we overreact to that Week 18 game? Did we undervalue the Eagles coming off a bye? Pierce, Jalen Hurts looked like he was right where he needed to be.
Yeah, who's weak? I didn't overreact to that. I wasn't worried about the Eagles. Sure,
you took the Giants, you liar.
Yeah, there you go.
I took the Giants. Look,
I was the one who
believe
took
that
the
the Giants
Eagles. I was
defense
the one who sat here and said, "Don't trust the Giants." You took the points, pal. I'm gonna roll the tape.
Yeah, I took the points, but that didn't mean that I was going to take the Giants to win the game. I thought that the Giants and Daniel Jones could play decent defense and hang in the game. They were unable to do it, but I didn't at any point. You could check the tape, and say, "Oh, the Eagles are bad. Oh, the Eagles defense isn't good," or Jalen Hurts can't play, or that. Like, who could discredit the Eagles? I mean, what would you? I mean, even if we were to roll back the tape and play fantasy mode like Jeff's playing, what would you say? what imaginary words did I speak ill of the Eagles? Go ahead and tell me. Like, what could anyone possibly say to dismiss the Eagles? Their quarterback plays great. Their line plays great. Their running backs are great. Their secondary was amazing, and their secondary proved to be amazing against Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones didn't even have to deal with very much pressure, and still he couldn't complete any passes. He had to deal with the ball hawks on the Eagles side. I think that the Eagles are going to have a pretty easy way with San Francisco moving forward. But I do want to take this moment to mention Richie James had a pretty good game. And
Yeah, there you go.
he would have had a 60-yard touchdown there, the last drive of the game, that would have really solidified an excellent season for the Super Freak.
All right, Jeff, you were on the Birds, buddy.
This guy Pierce,
He can't even.
took the points. He believes so much in the Eagles, he bet against them. No, I mean it's fair, I guess. It's fine. You know, Richie James, he wants to talk about, but yeah, look, this was just such. It was really a classic. You know, you've got Daniel Jones coming off, you know, against maybe the worst defense, and like it's not even hyperbole to say that the Vikings had the worst pass defense in the league, making him look just you know, so much better than he actually was. And then the Eagles coming off a bye, and everyone just forgetting how dominant this team was during like 15 weeks of the regular season. So honestly, there's not much to say here. It's just that everybody kind of got sucked into the Giants vortex. Brian Daboll, you know, everyone just got sucked in there. And I mean, you know, the 7.5 line, it seemed a little bit, you know, weak just because, you know, it's over the key number of 7, but there was a big gap between these two teams. And look, like the Giants, I kind of get why people like wanted to jump on them. I mean, you know, you look at the ATS record and everything that they did, it's fine, but like it definitely was a spot where people just overreacted to one win against the Vikings. And because the Eagles were off, this is just a product of our society. If we see you like 2 days ago, that's fine. If we see you like 2 weeks ago, you're basically gone. You don't exist. We can't remember what you were like. And that's what happened to the Eagles. And everyone just forgot about the Eagles. And it kind of cost them. It took the points.
What'd you tweet me this weekend? Good teams win, great teams cover?
Oh,
Yeah, baby. The Bengals did both, right? In conditions that Buffalo is really no stranger to either. The Bills got outplayed. The Bills got outcoached. You had Burrow absolutely outshining Josh Allen, and all on the biggest stage so far. Jeff, is it more we overrated the Bills or we underrated the Bengals?
It's a little bit of both in this scenario. I think that I just don't think people realize how good Joe Burrow is.
Yeah.
I think they're starting to realize this game was won because the Bengals basically just said on offense, okay, Joe, go to the line and just beat the Bills. And that's what they did. They got almost every snap on the Bengals, especially the first 2 drives. Joe Burrow was at the line early and he was changing the play. And that's why they were so dominant. That's why he went 9 for 9. He's looked at the defense and said, okay, we're going to do this instead. And they changed the play. And then you've got just Burrow also just in game, just like, modifying to the point where he's looking at one receiver, moving the defense, throwing to Hayden Hurst wide open in the touchdown, wide open in the end zone for a touchdown. He's moving a little bit around in the pocket. It's not a ton of mobility. It's not Lamar Jackson, but he's a very mobile quarterback that people just don't give him enough credit for. And then he's finding Jamar Chase over the top for a quick touchdown as well. Joe Burrow is absolutely at the peak of his game, 3 years into his career here, and like things are only going to get better. I mean, it's really just probably the funnest player to watch right now. I know we got Patrick Mahomes to talk about, but like this is potentially the best quarterback in the league. That's how good I rate him. Top 2 for sure, and so should other people right now. That's why the Bengals were so dominant in this game. Yes, they're very well coached. Yes, they have some great players, and they're just a really, really solid team. But like this game was won by Joe Burrow, and it's not even close.
Yeah, Pierce, like the Bengals missing 3 starters on the offensive line. It figured to be a key storyline. Like, heading into this game and following this game. And it was a key storyline. It proved to be the case, but not the way I think many people expected.
That their O-line's so deep, next man up.
They stepped up, and Joe Burrow was sacked just once, missing 60% of the starters on the offensive line.
Well, speaking of sacks, he did an interview a couple weeks ago, and they asked him about all these sacks and all the problems with them. And his response was, who cares? If you get sacked on 3rd and 10, it's the same as throwing an incomplete pass. So all these sacks, they don't really matter. Yeah, a sack early in the drive or early in the series, that's a bit of a problem, but who cares? And he doesn't care. He's a tough guy. He doesn't mind getting sacked. That's the guy that you want. That's the kind of confidence that you want from your lead quarterback, and it permeates throughout that team. The defense plays better than they should. The offense plays, the line plays better than they should. Everybody steps up when you got a guy like that leading your team. The play calling has been great. And just to go back to, have we undervalued the Bengals? Yeah, it's clear. I mean, they cover the spread every single week. They never get enough credit, and they always go out and exceed expectations. Meanwhile, on the other side, we have the Bills, who have constantly underperformed. Mm-hmm. They never met the expectations from day one. Now they've dealt with a lot of injuries. We mentioned that last week, and that was one of the reasons why I said take the money line. The Bills defense, even if they're able to get out there on the field, they are very banged up. The offense can be pretty one-dimensional at times, and if they fall into a bit of a hole, they're going to be in some problems. And then sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I think you got to be really bullish on the Bengals going into Kansas City.
All right, guys, San Fran moves on after a grind on offense. There are reports that Jimmy G has an outside chance to be ready this weekend and a better chance to be ready for the Super Bowl. Is it an overreaction to say that San Fran should just stick with Brock Purdy here? I mean, he played a far from perfect game. It was probably his most rookie-looking game of the year. Yeah. Looked pretty flustered a couple times there, but 19 of 29 for passing, 214 yards, no turnovers. Jeff, does it kind of feel like they've got something going with him?
No turnovers, but one dropped INT by Trayvon Diggs. That was not a well-thrown ball, tipped at the line. Look, it's a tough spot for Kyle Shanahan. The easy thing to do here is to just stick with Brock Purdy. He's gotten you this far. No one's going to question it. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves the story. You just step back and you just let it unfold. And, if it doesn't happen, you've got the out. You can say, well, we had a 7th rounder. There's nothing I could do. Next year we'll bounce back with Trey Lance and maybe Jimmy Garoppolo. The tough thing here, and I think it's the right choice, is if Jimmy Garoppolo is ready, you start Jimmy Garoppolo. There's probably nobody on earth that agrees with me about this take right now, but I think it's the correct one. I think Brock Purdy will probably get exposed by the Philadelphia Eagles next week. This is a secondary that is extremely tough to throw on. Those tip balls over the middle, they'll get picked off. There'll be nothing on the outside for Brandon Ayuk. The 49ers may be able to run the ball here. That may be their saving grace. But I think that Brock Purdy is going to be in a really tough spot against the Eagles next week. And I think that if I was Kyle Shanahan, again, this is probably like a pretty hot take by somebody. I would go back to Jimmy Garoppolo if he's ready. He's a veteran quarterback. He's going to be able to read the defense a little bit better and just make those smarter decisions. So, I don't think that, you're getting like a huge upgrade with Garoppolo, but if I had to choose between the two, a healthy Jimmy or Brock Purdy, I would take Garoppolo. So, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I don't think he'll go to Garoppolo this week. If there's even a hint of a chance that he's not going to be 100%, he'll just stick with Brock Purdy, which is just, it's the easy choice. And it's probably the smart choice if Garoppolo's not ready, because there's just so much criticism that'll come with a change in quarterback right now.
Pierce, are you going to be brave like Jeff and say, play Jimmy G?
I don't know how brave that is. Jeff and I were really the only two in the world last week that believed that the Dallas-San Francisco game was going to go under. The public, all of the money was on the over. Oh, Brock Purdy and this offense, they're averaging 30 points per game. They didn't play anybody. Anyone could have looked at that schedule and said, yeah, San Francisco has weapons and Purdy's looked okay because he's not playing good defenses. And then he faces Dallas and he looked like a rookie, as you mentioned. Well, Philadelphia on the road, just as tough. I would argue this is an even better defense, an even better secondary. San Francisco's hands are going to be tied. I don't know what they're going to do. They can roll out anybody at quarterback. I don't think they stand much of a chance. I can't believe the line is this low. Now, Purdy did play well against a good defense. He didn't make any big mistakes. They won the game, and he deserves credit for that. But he's going to have to do more this week. Now, maybe he steps up, but it's more likely he's going to implode. He could explode. He could implode. It's going to be a boom or bust game. I'm going to put my money on the Eagles.
All right, real quick here, guys. Let's go ahead and look at the opening lines here for Conference Championship Sunday. So you got the Eagles, 2.5-point favorites there at home. Total at 45.5. Chiefs, slight favorites with an injured quarterback. We know Burrow undefeated in his career versus Mahomes. Pierce, you just said you're very bullish on the Bengals going to KC. So what's your opening reaction to these lines?
Yeah, give me the Bengals. Give me the Bengals money line. Give it to me now. I just don't understand why this is this close. I get it. They're giving some respect to Kansas City. We don't know what Mahomes' status is going to be, but he's not going to be 100%. He's going to be limping around. The offense was already not 100%. It's a dink-a-dunk offense against a good defense. They don't have much of a running game. Good luck. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Kansas City is just a 1-point favorite at home in the playoffs. That tells you everything you need to know. And then the Philadelphia side, this line's going to move. Philadelphia is a much better team. I know San Francisco's got a good defense, but Philadelphia looks like they're ready to roll.
Jeff, what's the game bet right now?
So right now, today, I think that the game you need to get on is the Eagles. If you like the Eagles side, you need to get on the Eagles. That's what I would do. I mean, that's the side I like as well. I want to get it under 3. I think that line, as Pierce just mentioned, it's going to move, and it's probably going to move very quick, and I'm almost surprised it hasn't done it yet. I like the Bengals side as well in that game, but I wonder, as we get later in the week and we get better news on Mahomes, which you're probably going to get, he's probably going to be moving around practicing, and, you know, as soon as some kind of positive injury report comes out of Mahomes, I think you will see this line move. I think that the Chiefs are still a very public bet. So if you're like Kansas City, be more inclined to wait and see if you can get a good number. It's still risk involved if you wait. Who knows? I mean, you could get like bad news on Mahomes. Maybe they'll try and sandbag it, and then the line will flip and the Bengals will be favored. But you know what? I mean, it's basically already at. You can just take the money line. So I would jump on the Eagles here quickly. It's still under 3. That's the line I think is going to move very soon.
We need to talk to Kansas City's saxophone guy. He might have some information. And then also the bath bomb dude. Maybe they'll help us out with that.
That's next. No, I'm just kidding. Good stuff, guys.
Inside sources in Kansas City now.
Yeah. Is your source
Hey,
Emerson?
I saw Lil Jon concert halftime show on Saturday. That was cool.
All right. Thank you, too. We appreciate it. We are moving on to the NBA. Coming up next, 7-game slate. Celtics looking to extend their winning streak to 10. Are they going to be on our analyst lineup? We'll find out. All right. We are kicking off the week with a 7-game slate in the association.
Yeah, wow.
Fantastic. We are joined by Jeff Pratt and Nick Fryer. Fellas, got some high-priced dudes available today. on the DK Sportsbook. Let's build some lineups here, starting with your pick for guard. Jeff, are you paying up here?
I'm not paying all the way up. I think we're looking at a strong potential return on investment with Terry Rozier at 8K. Generally speaking, it's a good strategy to roster guards who are facing the Jazz. Utah ranks nearly dead last in fantasy points allowed to opposing backcourts, and it makes perfect sense when you look at their depth chart. I mean, all due respect to Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, Malik Beasley, and Colin Sexton, but Emerson, I think you could probably have a productive night facing off against those guys. I mean, it is really ugly to watch. And Rozier's been pretty consistent lately. He's coming off a 55 fantasy point performance against the Hawks. Even if LaMelo Ball does return from injury tonight, I still think this is a good spot for him.
All right, Nick, what do you think? You're not going to pay all the way up either?
No, I am going to pay all the way up at guard. I'm going to save elsewhere. I'm going to go with Damian Lillard at 10.1K going up against the Spurs. Obviously, the Blazers are on the second leg of a back-to-back, and this game has the second highest total on the slate on DraftKings Sportsbook. It's set at 241. When we look at what Lillard's done on the second leg of a back-to-back, the two times he's done that this season, he's done pretty well. 40 points last time against Dallas on 58% shooting. Then against the Thunder earlier in the season, only 28 points, but still 52% shooting, 50% from three on 12 attempts. In Oklahoma City, that was the team he was playing in that game. They're top 10 in defensive rating. The same cannot be said of the San Antonio Spurs, that is for sure. And last time Lillard saw them, he cooked them for 60.25 DK fantasy points, which is the form that he's been in recently. He's got 60-plus DK fantasy points in 3 of Portland's last 5. If Lillard, for some reason, doesn't play because it's the second leg of a back-to-back, I think you can pivot to Anthony Simons at 6.5K. The only thing with him would be he'd be very popular because we all know what he can do, but still he'd be a great play at 6.5.
Yo, what's the move at forward here, Fryer? I mean, either you or Pratt got to be going Jaylen Brown, right? He's at a point now where a 40-point like fantasy night becomes a disappointment. Oh, not to mention you're playing the Magic. Lord have mercy on their soul because they surrender the third most fantasy points to wings this season, Fryer.
Yeah, I mean, you could go that route. You could go the Tatum route. I'm sure Jeff is going to talk about one of those two guys. I'm actually going to go to the Memphis game, and I'm going to look at Harrison Barnes at 5.7K. There are a few forwards that you can roster there. Actually, I have another forward I like a lot from this game, but I'm going to save him for our value conversation. For Harrison Barnes, look, this is the highest total on slate, 245.5 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Memphis is on the second leg of a back-to-back like Portland is. The Kings, of course, are an up-tempo team, but this is a pace-up spot for the Kings going up against the Grizzlies. And Memphis gives up a lot of DK fantasy points to wings, 21st in DK fantasy points allowed to 21st in DK fantasy points allowed to small forwards this season. And for Barnes specifically, 5 times value in 7 of the last 11 games. That's all since the calendar turned over to 2023. 5 times value in 2 of Sacramento's 3 games versus Memphis this season. I think Kevin Huerter is another option you consider in this 5K range in this game. But again, there's another guy that I want to roster that's going to save you even more that we'll talk about later.
Okay, cool. Pratt, you going Tatum or you going Brown? Just be honest with me. Open up. Be vulnerable.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the floor to be vulnerable. I'm going to go with Jason Tatum tonight. I think Jaylen Brown's a great play, but I think paying all the way up for Tatum makes sense. You have 4 guys who are 10K or higher on tonight's slate. I think paying up for Tatum gives you the best chance at an elite return out of those guys. I know Nick said he loves Damian Lillard. I think that's a good spot for him as well. But considering Tatum's matchup and his recent form, this is a great spot for him. The Magic are horrible defensively against wings, as you said, Emerson. They're ranked 28th in fantasy points allowed to them. Tatum has scored 70-plus fantasy points in back-to-back games. He's fresh after resting in Saturday's contest against Toronto. Now, the one issue is this game does have blowout potential, but I'm not overly concerned about that. The Celtics, while they're on a long winning streak, they tend to play down to the level of their opponents and keep games close until the end. When they do pull away, they also won't have Marcus Smart or Malcolm Brogdon and potentially Rob Williams tonight. So Tatum should be on the floor for plenty of this one.
Yeah, it's monster volume incoming for Jason Tatum tonight, man, for sure.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's talk centers.
Wow,
Jeff, who do you like? Domantas Sabonis and his 22-game run of double-doubles, perhaps? He's very expensive.
Dude.
You guys know I love Domantas Sabonis, but I'm actually going to take someone who might be a mini version of him. I think we're getting a bit of a steal with Alperen Şengün at just 8,400 tonight. If you looked at this guy's numbers over his last 3 games without seeing his name or price tag, you'd probably guess he's somewhere in the 10 to 11K range. He's racked up 54 plus fantasy points in each of those contests, including dropping 70 against the Lakers. We've seen high-level scoring and rebounding per usual from him. But what has really impressed me is his playmaking. He only averages 3.3 assists on the year, but he's dished out 6 or more in 6 straight games. I mean, it's impossible to watch him over this recent stretch and not see shades of Nikola Jokic or Domantas Sabonis in his game. And despite running a 2-big system, he's facing Minnesota tonight. The Timberwolves are actually pretty poor defensively against opposing centers. So I expect Şengün to stay hot.
All right, Nick, what's the play here at center?
I'm not going to speak against Şengün, but I will say a guy, if you want to differentiate yourself a little bit while Şengün is getting all the love, Mason Plumlee, 6.7K, going up against Jazz, 3rd highest total on the slate. And when you go and look at some of his game logs and see what he's done throughout the course of the season, it's pretty surprising with Plumlee, especially of late. Since the start of the new year, he's logged over 40 DK fantasy points 5 times, and that's in 10 games. Again, we're talking 6.7K, and you're getting 40 DK fantasy points half the time with this guy. It's a pretty good return. We're not even talking 5 times value, which he's done in 8 of those 10 games. So 3 additional games where he's been very productive in providing on his salary. And then the Jazz, too, tied 29th in terms of DK fantasy points allowed to opposing centers this season. So give me him at 6.7K all day.
All right, Nick, you and that sexy hair that is just sitting alone on your forehead. You teased earlier your value play. Time to deliver for the people.
I feel weird now that you're talking about my hair so specifically.
I mean, you look nice.
Oh, thanks. I don't believe you for a second. But anyways, for a value play, so Keegan Murray, 4.4K, going up against the Grizzlies. We already talked before about how high this total is, the highest on the slate. The Grizzlies are on the second leg of a back-to-back. The Grizzlies are also an up-tempo spot for an up-tempo team. They do defend power forwards better than they do the wing. But we talked about Domantas Sabonis and how much attention that he requires. I think that Keegan Murray, I love the idea of him getting extra opportunities because of how good Sabonis is. And honestly, that's been kind of paying off for people who've been rostering him of late. In 9 of the last 10, he's provided 5 times value. Of course, there was that one game where he went off for 51 DK fantasy points against Oklahoma City recently. Not expecting that necessarily to happen tonight, in the realm of possibilities, but we know that you're getting a good foundation, a good floor with this guy, and you can rely on that tonight with the possibility of him popping off.
Jeff Pratt, your top value play tonight, man.
I'm going right back to the Rockets here. I already said Minnesota was poor defensively against centers, but they're even worse defensively against wings. So I'm rolling with Eric Gordon at 4,400. It feels like the only time, to be honest, I see Gordon on my timeline is when he's calling out his own teammates for lack of effort, but he's quietly putting together a pretty productive season. He's racked up 28 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4. And his usage rate has bumped up significantly over that stretch, surpassing 19% 3 times. He scored double-digit points in 11 of his last 12 games. I expect that streak to continue tonight. I think you're looking at a solid value play here.
All right, real quick, before you take off, Pratt, you're a tennis guy. Hook us up with your favorite Australian Open bet for the quarterfinals.
I'll take Novak Djokovic minus 5.5 against Andre Rublev. Rublev has actually put together a strong tournament so far, and he did beat Djokovic in 2022 in Serbia. But Novak's just on a different level right now. I've been saying it for days. Since Daniil Medvedev lost last week, I've already penciled in Djokovic to win this tournament. It'll be his 4th Australian Open title in the last 5 years, which is insane. Barring a ridiculous collapse, there's just no one left in this field that can beat him. He's dropped just 1 set through 4 rounds. Meanwhile, Rublev is coming off a long 5-setter against Holger Rune. He's going to be exhausted. Djokovic should take care of this one pretty quickly.
All right, good stuff, gentlemen. Fryer, we'll see you in a little bit as part of our Sweat Hall of Fame voting will continue. But after this break, let's see where Jeff and Colin believe some of the best golfers in this week's field. The Farmer Insurance Open will finish. John Rahm coming off his 4th win in his last 6 starts worldwide. Hang out. We're back in a minute. Right now, the golf world belongs to Jon Rahm, and everyone else is just living in it. So let's talk about some dudes who can roll a good meatball with Colin Sherwin, and Jeff Ulrich has returned pin placement, PGA Tour pin placement for the Farmers Insurance Open. Tell us where the following guys are going to finish. Speaking of Jon Rahm, yesterday picking up his 4th victory in his last 6 worldwide starts. He continues to pick up momentum. Where does he finish at Torrey Pines this week, Jeff?
Is there a place higher than first? Is there like a first-ish? I don't know. Yeah, man. I mean, he's probably going to win again. Like, honestly, look, this field, it's funny. Yeah, we're going to a tougher golf course, and yeah, it's a US Open style. This field is actually weaker than it was last week. I mean, Jon Rahm at plus 450, you could argue that maybe he should be like plus 350 or plus 400. He's probably going to win again. I don't know how you can't peg him. Like, if you're just picking, again, we're not even talking about the odds. We're just talking about who we think is going to win. Like, how do you go off Jon Rahm at this point? I think there's maybe like 1 or 2 players who could pop up, but there is now a clear demarcation between like the Jon Rahm tier, and maybe you put Rory just underneath him, and everybody else. I mean, he's 54 under par in 8 rounds this year. 54 under. I don't care where they're playing. He's 54 under. He's won 4 times in 6 starts. Like, this is Tiger Woods territory.
Yeah.
Even like Dustin Johnson had a couple runs in his prime, but this is almost better than that. This is Jon Rahm putting his stamp and saying, you know, like, I'm the best player in the world. Here it is, guys. Come and get it. And the other thing that factors into this, Emerson, for some reason, he's only moved up 2 spots in the official world golf rankings after all these wins. He's got to be a little bit pissed about that. So, yeah, I think he wants the #1 spot. I think he's going to win again because this is his favorite golf course in the world, too.
Yeah, they just need to get rid of those rankings. You've heard, like, Tiger and everyone else say it's pretty messed up. Colin, we're talking about a guy, Jon Rahm, 134 under par in his last 7 tournaments. Like, let that mind-boggling number sink in.
So here are those last 7 tournaments in terms of place. T2, win. T4, win. T8, win. Now, those aren't all full field events. There are some limited events in there. You know, he won the Century Tournament of Champions, which is only like 40 players. I mean, so there's some limited events. But last week he beat a full field. This is getting close to Tiger level. Yeah. I mean, we're not there yet, but we're getting close to where it's going to be Rahm, you know, not at even money like Tiger used to be, but like Rahm with a price against the field. And yeah, I'm with Jeff. You know, 450 seems insane when you got to beat 155 people over 2 courses at a place where the rough. I just played this course a month ago. The rough is not your friend out there. We played it under the tournament conditions and the tournament pin placements, and it sucked. So it's a tough track. But let me tell you, if anyone can do it and do this thing back, certain keep the does that as well as anyone.
All right, Jeff. Top finisher between these 3: Homa, Zalatoris, and Finau. Will Zalatoris, last year's runner-up at Torrey Pines. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm still in just wait and see mode with Zalatoris. You know, obviously it's going to be his first real course like played with the back injury. It's fine to wait and see. It's not a big deal. We're also pairing him with 2 extremely high-end golfers. I will say Tony Finau is probably the guy you should be targeting out of those 3. Really consistent week last week. I think Finau is in a really good spot. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily bet him or take the odds, but this is a player I would really keep an eye on over the next couple months. I think he's progressing to something big this year, which is like a major championship. So Finau loves this course. Top 6 at the Farmers in 4 of his last 6 starts here. Just absolutely sets up great long iron player. Big off the tee, can get it in, up high out of the rough. There's really nothing, and his putting has just improved so much over the last couple of years. So I'll take Finau. Homo's a close second for me, though, and then I'd rank Zalatoris 3rd.
Jeff, what do we think? I mean, Colin, what do we think?
They look the same.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jeff's assessment here, but just because of the price, I'm going to take Homa. 20 plus 2,500 on an odds bet against plus 1,200. I think he's just a little bit better as if you're handicapping the field, you're trying to pick a winner. I think Homa is a really well priced this week. Driving accuracy is just going to be so huge here because you're conceding a stroke every time you put it in the rough. This thing was grown. I'm telling you, it looked like a thatch out there. I mean, you just could not get out of this grass. I think Rahm won last week at 27 under. 15 under won this tournament last year. I think it might even be lower than that this year because they've set this thing really, really tough. These greens are like cement. So it's a much tougher course. Keeping the ball in the fairway is huge. Homa does that better than either Finau or the other player who I didn't, Zalatoris. So even though Zalatoris got to a playoff last year in this event, missed a putt on 18 that would have won it for me, ended up losing the playoff. I haven't seen enough out of his game right now either. So I will take Homa of these three, especially with the price.
Jeff, 3 former winners here. Justin Rose, Luke List, Jason Day. Jason Day, if anyone hasn't heard, is playing well again. Still think he's a fraud for the most part, but has a great history on this course. Who do you like among those 3 guys that have the highest finish?
Hey, look, I mean, if anyone, if there's like a guy who could come out of that kind of 20 and a plus and over range and maybe give John Rahm a real run like on this course, it is actually Jason Day. Putted extremely well last week. At one time in the world, one time about 5 years ago now, Jason Day was like the best putter we've ever seen, especially on POA greens. So very interested to see. I will probably have some exposure to that. I would certainly rank him first. He played well last week. He was kind of up there for a bit. Petered off a little bit in the final round, but had a really, really nice one round where he gained 4 strokes on approach. Brings that kind of game, a little bit more consistency this week. He's going to get himself in the mix. Pretty good, when the weather's bad, Jason Day kind of plays well. I would rank Rose last year. I just think this course is too long for him at this point in his career. Luke List has actually played okay recently. The putter is still out there in oblivion, but if he putts even just semi-poorly, he should be fine. The ball striking's back. So I'd go Day, List, Rose here. Very interested in Jason Day this week. Probably be betting him, unfortunately.
And Colin, Luke List earning his first PGA Tour victory here last year. That was in a playoff, I believe, against Will Zalatoris. Do you think Luke List has a chance to finish higher than guys like Jason Day and Justin Rose?
I do not. If I am taking this right now, believe it or not, I'm actually going to go with Rose. Of the 3 that are listed here, if you're looking for the highest ceiling, the guy who could actually win the thing, I think that's going to be Rose. Here are his last results at Torrey. 2012 or 2022 T6, got cut at the U.S. Open, got cut into 2020, but he won this thing in 2019. In 18 and 17, T8, T4. He understands this course. This is a course where local knowledge is really going to help you. I think if anyone could just go kind of random low, it's him. I like him as the high ceiling, low floor kind of guy. But if I need to pick somebody, if these are all equally weighted, Jason Day probably is going to be a little more consistent. So I would take Day in the threesome to win, but if I'm trying to pick a winner of the tournament, I would actually go with Rose.
Colin, who's finishing best between Schauffele, Thomas, and Colin Morikawa? Morikawa looking to redeem himself after squandering a 54-hole 6-shot lead at the Century Tournament of Champions. Really just an epic collapse. He was just one of 9 PGA Tour players in history to do that.
Ooh, and it was so melty and so painful. The double on 15, get out of here, man. It's terrible. But this course could not set up better for the kid from Southern California. Driving accuracy, he's one of the best on tour, and on approach, he's picking up 2.3 strokes per round, 1.9 strokes per round in driving accuracy. I love this guy this week. I think he could absolutely go out and blitz this thing if he can just sort of avoid the meltdown at the end at a track that he knows extremely well. I think Morikawa is definitely the right play this week. So for me, this is an easy one. Give me Colin Morikawa, and I think he will probably, as a Colin, put up a little better score than I did.
Yeah, Jeff, what do you think? You think he's going to be better than Schauffele and Thomas?
I mean, Colin Morikawa definitely from that group is, feels like the guy who has the best reason to just come in here and potentially, show off after his collapse. But I would rate Schauffele here probably the best bet or the best target. I know the back injury is worrisome, but this is just more of a stat thing. I mean, proximity from over 170, 100, 200 yards, he's right up there. His stroke gain approach has been off the charts of late. He's also played this course a lot. He's got a lot of experience. He played really well last week. So pretty interested in Schauffele. Thomas, I just don't like these. He's obviously, he could pop at any time, but didn't start well. Don't really like this. Morikawa would be second for me for sure. I feel like there's some mental scar tissue that's going to need to heal for Morikawa before he gets back in contention again. But Schauffele is definitely another player, kind of like Jason Day, where if someone's going to dethrone Rahm this week, if it was him, it wouldn't shock me that much.
All right, gentlemen, your job here is done. Well played. We're going to see who our analysts on our MLB, our Sweats MLB Hall of Fame committee.
Fake voting.
That's right. Apparently the support for Gary Sheffield picking up, but is it too late? Stick around. We're back in 1 minute. All right, back here on the Sweat, where the votes continue to pile up. It's the Sweat Hall of Fame votes, by the way. So you need 6 votes to get in. This is where we stand through 5 ballots. We have 8 total. And right now, Nick Fryer and Paul Bruno are going to unveil theirs. Jared Carabas will be the 8th ballot that will be unveiled. 8th and final one will happen tomorrow here on The Sweat. So with Nick and Paul here, Fryer, we're going to take a look at your ballot because you went ahead and decided to vote in the max 10 dudes, which I absolutely love. So the biggest factor for you, voting for some of these guys here, what was it?
So obviously stats is the easiest thing that comes out. And I know there are still some numbers that are like legacy numbers that maybe don't apply right now, but I do still care about average when I'm looking at this kind of stuff because we're talking about the best of the best. And obviously when we're looking at home run numbers, that stuff's important too. Defense is also important. I remember hearing Matt LaMarca talk about this last week, and I really appreciate him putting defense first. I know there may be one guy left off my list that's a head scratcher in that regard, but still, I think A-Rod, I think Manny, I think Beltran, and I think Sheffield are all pretty self-explanatory, and I know people have talked about those guys at different lengths here. I know with each of those guys, you do have controversy. And look, as I will say, like when in my playing career, like it was the whole PEDs and stuff like that. I was always like, no, I'm never going to do that. I'm going to, whatever happens, happens. Do it all natural. And obviously you get tested in college and things like that. And it's, some guys find ways to do it or whatever. Some guys don't. I definitely in summer ball heard about guys talking about teammates at their schools using it. So like that was a thing. And I get it. And I definitely for a period of time looked down on it and had a real issue. But in the end, like it's like we're talking about the museum. Like it is as much as we're trying to honor the elite guys, some of these guys were the elite guys of that era and they deserve to be, featured in the Hall of Fame, featured in this museum. You can't just go and ignore them. So I do think Bonds and Clemens being, not in there, I do have a bit of an issue with that, especially since those two guys probably have been Hall of Famers even before they started using their stuff. Another thing too, and it kind of ties into what I'm talking about with the stats and the importance of these players, are they a significant part of the story of the era that they played? And I actually got this from a coworker a few years back. I actually never thought about it from this angle, but it's like, okay, when I think about this era of baseball, are these guys that pop into my head and part of the story and have maybe major moments or were, tough hitters, pitchers, whatever. And absolutely. And then also I know peak is important, absolutely, but consistency. I need some balance in that regard. And there's a guy who I left off of my list that did have a pretty significant peak and some good numbers, but I had to leave him off my list because he wasn't consistent throughout the course of his career and he really fell off a cliff big time.
And you're talking about Andrew Jones there, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, you didn't vote him in. Is that just because of his drop-off? Because he won 10 consecutive Golden Glove awards from 98 to 07. And interesting to note, he received 7.3% of the vote from the Baseball Writers Association in 2018. That is up to 41.4% in 2022.
Yeah, and I will say too, in that, when it comes to seeing guys' numbers increase, I do find it a little odd when that happens. I know some people get taken off the list or whatever, but did they always view them as a Hall of Fame player since they've been able to vote on these ballots, or have they just over time been like, you know what, his numbers look pretty good compared to this guy, that guy? And for me, Jones, I mean, he was like, so if I kept going, I wrote down 13 guys originally and tried to figure out, okay, where do these guys fall? Todd Helton, he was just off my list. Andrew Jones was just off, and then Jimmy Rollins was another guy who I feel is in a different tier. But honestly, when I think of defensive outfielders from that era, Torrey Hunter comes to my mind before Andrew Jones does. And he also won 9 Gold Gloves. And you look at him, he hit well for average. I know he wasn't close in home runs. I think he was like 100 off, but still over 300 home runs. And we still saw him be an all-star later in his career. And with Andrew Jones, where we talk about that huge fall off for him, yes, 10 Gold Gloves in a row, that's extremely impressive. But Torrey Hunter, he's an all-star later in his career. He won 9 Gold Gloves. Omar Vizquel, I know not nearly as intimidating a hitter as either one of those two guys, but he got 11 Gold Gloves. One was stolen by A-Rod when arguably, A-Rod, sure, good defender at times in his career, but Omar Vizquel was the guy. And when I look at him too, it's him and Ozzie Smith. I know Ozzie Smith was like a 15-time All-Star or whatever, so it's a little different, but Ozzie Smith did not hit better for average in an era that I would say is probably easier to hit. And Ozzie Smith had 2 more Gold Gloves than him. So to me, Omar has to be in this conversation, legitimately. I don't know where he's getting from the voters, but yeah, I had to go with those two guys. And I'm surprised. I feel like a lot of people have left K-Rod off of this list too. And look, being a guy who pitched and for a little bit longer, in understanding relievers and what they go through, people can say all they want about your best reliever should be thrown in the 9th inning. What?
All right. We got to get Paul. We got to get Paul in here. I know you're passionate about it, and I do appreciate that. Real talk.
Emerson.
I mean, Omar Vizquel is on Paul's ballot. You know who else is? Andrew Jones. You also got Manny on there. Sheffield, Pettit, steroid guys, but no A-Rod. Paul, what's up with that?
It's the smileability factor too. Are they character guys? Manny makes everybody smile. So that's an edge that he has. But there are numbers that back my picks too. Manny Ramirez, 5 times homered over 40 times in a year. Career OBP 411. That number is much higher than A-Rod's career. 555 home runs, postseason successes there across the board. Strikeout rate, this is another one separator. He's got a strikeout rate of 18.5%. Sheffield, 10.6 the strikeout rate. Another guy with 500 plus homers, 292 batting average, 393 on base percentage. The on base percentage is a key distinguishing factor for me too. A-Rod's career was a 380. So that's a significant difference over of a career, plus the strikeout rate, plus the character issues. So those were separators for me, putting Ramirez and Sheffield in and keeping A-Rod out. And then Andy Pettis is another guy that I'm surprised that doesn't get more love. This guy had a 626 win percentage in his career, 19-11 in the postseason when he was facing the aces of arguably every other staff that he was confronting in the postseason. Over 6 innings a start in his career, while even better in the postseason. So a guy who raised his level in the postseason from a pretty stellar regular season career, easy pick for me. Okay. Then the other guys, you talk about Andrew Jones. Yeah, you guys covered the fact that he was pretty stellar himself for a 10-pack of seasons in a row. 990 fielding percentage along with the 730 homer seasons, 434 home runs overall, the big RBI total. Todd Helton, similar case, 316 batting average. We know he did most of that in the Mile High situation. 414 OBP, also significant, along with a great fielding percentage himself. Pretty good defensive player along with the offensive metrics. Bobby Abreu, another guy, lots of good numbers across the board, stolen bases as well as the power numbers, and rare combination there, 400 stolen bases and all the power that he showed in his career. Jeff Kent did it on both sides of the ball, a middle infielder with a 980 fielding percentage, and all those offensive numbers, fantastic. And you got to show some love for the fielding aces in the game. Omar Vizquel, maybe only topped by a couple of guys throughout his career, a 985 fielding percentage in the infield. That's remarkable. So that's the case that I made for my guys, and I had trouble getting more than 8 guys in the loop because there was some failure in a couple of situations that I valued in the other situations.
Okay. Well, guys, we're going to have one more ballot that will be unveiled tomorrow. Again, that's Jared Carrabis. So one more ballot. Alex Rodriguez, Scott Rowland, Billy Wagner, Manny Ramirez, Gary Sheffield. Like, he's going to be the deciding vote between those guys. Those are the only dudes who can get into our fake sweat baseball Hall of Fame. Nick Fryer, you are free to go. But Paul, we need you to stick around because we got to rip through some best bets here for this 4-game NHL slate.
Real quick.
And let's start with Panthers, Rangers. What is your best bet in that game tonight, Paul?
I like the Rangers. The Panthers are down to their third and fourth options in net, while the Rangers have one of the best guys going for them. So I'm taking them on the puck line at plus 180. The Panthers are giving up way too much defensively. The Rangers are going to pick them apart. Should be an easy win there.
All right, Islanders, Toronto, where are you going?
I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, but I'm going to do a parlay here and take the Leafs to win and go under 5 goals total and get a nicer payoff than any of the singular bets in that regard.
Buffalo, Dallas, where are you going?
Buffalo, Dallas, over 6.5. Got to go maybe over a 7.5. I don't trust the goaltending for Buffalo, and Dallas's offense is on fire. I think Buffalo's offense speaks for itself, too. One of the highest scoring teams in the league. So they'll go over as well. I think it's going to be like a 5-3 game.
Columbus, Calgary, talk to me.
Calgary to win. They're playing a lot better lately. Columbus, one of the league's dregs. I'm going to go for a parlay here again, taking Calgary to win under 6.5 because I think Markstrom and Vladar are getting their games together at a good time for this club. Plus 145 the payout there.
All right, Paul. Good stuff, man. Appreciate it. Nice work today. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We're back here in studio tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. We will see you then.